by starting the work session. Welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning into tonight's work session. Work sessions are conducted to provide City Council with introductory information, to have opportunities to provide staff guidance, and to facilitate initial conversations on a topic. No votes are taken. As such, there is not an opportunity provided for members of the community to provide comments or to ask questions during a work session. Those interested in providing comments to the City Council can do so during the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. So up first, Amy, welcome. Do you want to come up to the desk here?
Sure.
And we have 5 really simple questions.
Sure.
If you watch the other interviews, they're pretty much the same questions.
Okay.
And this is the first in-person interviews we have done in probably 2 years. So
very exciting.
It is so good to have somebody here doing these interviews, even when we did them in, what would it have been, March, they were still all virtual. So we have 5 questions. I'll start, and should we just go this way and then circle back around? Is that okay if we all take a question? Okay. All right. So, Amy, why don't you start off by briefly introducing yourself and telling us why you want to be a member of the HPC?
Yeah, so my name's Amy Kudrowski. We live at 2014 4th Street East, so it's the Gables. Interested in joining because we obviously live in a very cool, very historic home. I grew up in a historic home as well, and I loved watching my parents refurb it and totally make it so great. But the thing that always made me sad is while we grew up, I grew up in a really cool home, and it was on the shores of Lake Michigan and Wisconsin. It wasn't part of a historical preservation. So anyone around could tear down a house, paint their house bright pink, whatever it might be. And while I saw my parents, they loved their house, and a lot of our neighbors did. Not everyone did, and it made me really sad to see, others not necessarily take as great care of their house. So that was one of the reasons when we were looking for an old home, we actually chose Carver because we loved the idea that we would always have that small town Carver feel. We would always have Main Street. We would always have that like small town America vibe. So I just wanted to really be a part of that and be able to contribute to others looking to do things with their homes.
Great.
The second question, well, first of all, we didn't introduce ourselves.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. We connected on all things Packers in Wisconsin.
Oh.
So I'm Courtney Johnson. I'm the mayor.
I'm sorry to hear that. My name's Christy Mock, and obviously I'm a council member. I'm also the liaison for the HPC. Wonderful.
I'm Glenn Henry, council member. My condolences about being a Packer fan.
Lori Sayer, City Council.
And I'm Joy McKnight. I'm also on the City Council.
Wonderful.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And then the second question we have for you is, what do you feel the role of the HPC is?
I think it's just encouraging and helping others make the right decisions when they're looking to maintain the preservation and the historical significance of their homes. I think that my husband and I have learned so much already from just owning the home for a short period of time, that there's so much to learn, and I really want to become a part of it to learn more myself, but then to also be able to help others make those decisions and ensure that we're preserving the history of this awesome city of Carver, and having it look great and stay great.
Thank you.
In terms of historic preservation, what do you think is positive about the actions the city has taken, and what do you think could be improved upon?
Sure. So I love that we have like a booklet and reference to obviously the National Preservation Society, and I think that that's really helpful when you're looking at what you're doing. I love the idea of having a historic preservation council and being able to go and speak about things and come up with alternatives in a meeting versus it just being a sheet of paper and then you get a sheet of paper back. I think that having that interaction is really important because when we came to talk about our deck, we were able to have a conversation with some of the HPC members, and it was really eye-opening for us, and I think that we were able to come to a really great conclusion from being able to have that conversation. So I love that. I think that just continuing to get fresh perspectives and ideas is really important and things that we can continue to do better. I'm obviously younger. I'm 31, and I think that that's just really cool to be able to bring in some fresh new ideas. And I'm really into a lot of preservation DIY stuff, and that's something that I'm really passionate about personally. I think I have a lot of really great ideas that are maybe non-traditional, but I think would really fall in line with the guidelines of HPC.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you answered this partly in Glenn's question, but what personal strengths do you bring to the HPC?
Sure. So I'm obviously very into DIY, saw a house renovated while growing up and had a big part of that in helping my parents. I'm also a human resources director for a retail company. So being in HR, I'm very used to talking with people from all walks of life and helping fully explain situations. I have a great attention for detail when it comes to policies because that is HR and that is what you need to have as an HR person. So while still enforcing the policies to the T, but also understanding that sometimes there are situations where you might have to deviate from that for one reason or another. And I think that I have that mindset for the HPC.
Thank you.
And last question, Amy. The HPC meets on the second Tuesday of the month. Will you be able to consistently attend the meetings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So as far as next steps, we're going to kind of put this aside, and then we will consider an appointment at the end of our council meeting at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay.
Okay.
You can also go home and enjoy the nice evening and watch online if that's
great.
Or come back at 7, your call.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone has told you, but there are always 5 commissioners and then 2 alternates.
Correct.
The alternates are always expected to attend the meetings because you never know when somebody's not going to make it. Or,
Sure.
You know, so, and the role that you're applying for is for the alternate.
Correct.
That's where we have the space. Okay.
Wonderful.
Then you know. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Amy.
it.
Go Packers.
Go Pekka.
All right.
Yep. Go.
All right. Thank you. All right. Up next on the agenda, we have the Ironwood Park Improvement Project, the plan review. Ms. Smith and Jonathan?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jonathan's going to pull up some slides that we'll talk through and we will discuss.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jonathan Nelson. I've been working with the city for a number of years, and I think this is the first time I've presented to Council, so nice to be here. I'm a landscape architect with Bolton and Mink. Been with the company for about 9 years, and I'm based out of our Burnsville office. So I've been working with the city for about a year on the Ironwood Park Improvement Project. And kind of tonight we're just going to go over kind of a little project background, where the project's come since its start about a year ago, kind of the key goals that were identified for the park, kind of a status update and update on the overall plan, and then review kind of the overall budget for the project, and then look at next steps and any questions you might have. And also feel free to just ask questions as we go too. So looking back, the first kickoff meeting for the project was held in June of 2021 with the council, and that was kind of just a discussion on, what the goals were for the project, what the needs were for the park system in Carver and specific to Ironwood Park. And I wasn't at that meeting, but I watched the meeting and kind of identified some of the key points from that meeting here on the left. First thing was coordinate improvements with the school. Obviously, being directly adjacent to the school, we want to be good stewards and continue that good relationship between the city and the school district. So, looking at opportunities to incorporate them and think of their needs in the park. Attractions for all ages, multi-generational. Not providing amenities only for one age group or one user group, but people of all ages and abilities. Providing something new and unique that Carver doesn't have currently in the park system. Accessibility, so looking at, with any improvements that are identified, looking at making sure that those meet ADA requirements, and just looking at opportunities to kind of expand on accessibility to the park site. And that kind of ties in again with trail connectivity, just looking at expanding on that existing trail system, and then looking at accessibility to that trail system. Also looking at keeping some unprogrammed spaces within the park. So not, fully developing out the park, not building out the whole site, but looking at keeping some of those open spaces preserved for some of those more informal uses like, like people just relaxing, doing yoga, kites, that kind of stuff. And then make the park unique, minimizing redundancy with amenities already within the park system. And then lastly, looking at incorporating some sort of pavilion or shelter, some sort of amenity that allows people to get out of the weather. The figure on the right is kind of a figure that we put together early in the project just to identify some of those potential improvement areas within the park boundaries. So on the right side, we have about a 1 acre site that's that existing kind of round space north of the athletic fields. On the far north side of the site, there's about 1.1 acres of open field space. And then in the southwest corner, it's identified here as about 3.8 acres of open space. I think it's actually closer to 3 acres now with there was some refinement to the pond for the development on the north there. So it got a little smaller, but that's kind of one of the bigger chunks of space that we're looking to develop. So again, since June 2021, we've had several meetings with the Parks Commission, as well as a public open house and kind of a council update meeting. And through that process, we've kind of landed on this current concept plan layout. Kind of see everything on this plan, so we'll kind of zoom into some different areas here to kind of highlight some of those improvements that were identified. So in that existing circle area on the east side of the site, adjacent to the school, there's a few, the improvements we're looking at there are an outdoor classroom space. So that really ties into that desire to work with the school district and provide some amenities for the elementary school. That can be, it also kind of could be considered a mini amphitheater. So just another kind of little performance space that can be used by the city or by residents for smaller gatherings. Additionally, in that space, we're looking at putting in a restroom enclosure. So something that will provide kind of a house for those porta potties at the site, kind of screen them from the rest of the uses and help to protect them from the environment too. So that would house 2 ADA accessible portable toilets. We're also looking at doing some screening of the existing electrical panel there. So as you're probably aware, it's kind of some sheets of plywood essentially on posts and has a bunch of electrical components on there. We want to kind of get that out of visual sight from the rest of the park, as well as kind of protect it from other people at the park. So the pictures on the left there, the top one is the outdoor classroom, kind of the aesthetic that we're looking at for the outdoor classroom. The one on the bottom is a restroom enclosure that we did on a previous project, but looking at doing something like that for the restroom enclosure and the electrical panel screening. So kind of a Trex style fence, so very durable, low maintenance.
I have a question really quick. We had talked about the restrooms before and moving them closer to the parking lot, and that was it. Now they're back in the same spot. There's 2. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we did shift the one over here a little bit and tried to pull it closer to the elementary school parking lot so that access with the trucks would be closer. Okay. But as Brent said, there's one over by the shelter too. We'll see here in a minute. Okay. So next, looking at the existing field on the north side of the site. In this area, we're looking at pretty minimal improvements. Essentially, the current configuration is, you have the ped bridge that crosses and then it just terminates into the lawn area. So we're looking at, enhancing those connections through the park and accessibility to these different areas. So looking at continuing a trail through that area, building off of that existing bridge connection, and adding a new culvert crossing across that drainage ditch on the west side of that field. Putting in a new culvert and then carrying the trail across and ultimately connecting to the development to the west and also to the parking lot on the south side of the site. And then beyond that, just installing some limestone block seating along that trail as well. The vision is that would be kind of a crushed limestone surfacing with some limestone blocks. It's kind of an informal gathering space along the trail system that is kind of tucked away from everything else. So it's, you know, you can go back there and enjoy some peace and quiet and just relax. We're also showing the future regional lift station on the north side there. That's you know, obviously a future improvement, a number of years out, but we just wanted to show that, you know, there is programming slated for the site in the future that will likely end up taking up a fair amount of the open space there. And then looking at that larger parcel on the south side, again, about 3 acres, I'd say, of space. This is where the majority of the improvements are identified. So a couple of the big ones, the parking lot. We did go through a number of refinements of the parking lot layout and the current configuration. Kind of with the current configuration, we tried to maximize the available park stalls as well as provide a drop-off location. And just really kind of tie it in with the Ironwood Drive improvements in a safe fashion, such that circulation functions both on Ironwood Drive as well as through the parking lot. The current configuration, it says 35 stalls on here. It's actually 34 plus 2 handicap accessible stalls. And then the drop-off lane has room for, I believe, 4 cars to queue in the drop-off lane. Beyond that, so the drop-off lane is also kind of identified as kind of a trailhead location. So we've put a few amenities at that location, including 3 bike racks, some limestone block seating, and a trail kiosk that would have maps of both the park itself, kind of the overall layout of the park itself, as well as on the other side would be a community-wide kind of trail map. To help users navigate through the community. We also identified a basketball court on there. You can see the kind of enlargement in the upper left. The intent would be that it would be kind of a 2-tone acrylic surfacing on that basketball court, so, you know, not a little higher end than a standard asphalt court, but also implementing kind of the city logo colors and adding the city logo to the surfacing as well. And that would be designed to, you know, the current high school court regulations. North of the basketball court, we have the concrete skate park. So this is about a 6,000 square foot facility that will kind of, I guess I highlight that on the next slide, so I'll just jump up there in a minute. But just wanted to point out again the trail connections to the west. That trail along the north side there kind of wraps up and around and into Timber Creek. And connects into the sidewalk network of Timber Creek, and then connects down to the south to the parking lot and further along down to Ironwood Drive. And then I'll kind of touch on the area around the picnic shelter in a slide here too. But so going to the skate park. So the skate park was identified as kind of a unique feature that's, you know, very unique to Carver. You know, obviously there's an existing skate park, but those ramps are kind of at the end of their life cycle. And a concrete skate park is typically the direction that a lot of communities go now, instead of the prefab above grade ramps, just due to kind of maintenance and durability of the facility. So this is a park we've been working with Spawn Ranch, who's a skate park designer out of California. We've worked with them at Bolton and Mink. We've worked with them on a number of projects in Minnesota and Iowa, and had really good results. So we've been coordinating directly with them on the park and the layout. And this is kind of the layout that we came up with. I'd say it's geared more towards beginner and intermediate users versus more advanced users. And a lot of that has to do with just the size. So those advanced users will generally require a larger footprint for a skate park. The park is laid out such that in the future it could be expanded if you know that need or desire for a larger skate park grows. It could be expanded into the open space to the west. And you'll see a note on this slide that says the skate park would be procured through a separate cooperative purchase agreement. So I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with cooperative purchase agreements, but I'll kind of talk about that after we look at the shelter, just to give you a better understanding of how that process works. So this is the picnic shelter, the current configuration for the picnic shelter. This has kind of undergone a couple iterations based on feedback from the Parks Commission and Council. But it originally, I believe, was a 40 by 30 shelter, and it has since grown to a 60 by 30. And we are anticipating that that could accommodate 10 picnic tables, as well as house a two-sided food service counter. That counter would have electrical receptacles on each side, so you can plug in crock pots and things like that for events. And then additionally, the shelter would have electrical receptacles in 4 of the posts around the perimeter, so that you can hook up your sound systems and any other electrical needs you might have if you're using the shelter or renting the shelter for an event. There would also be lighting on the ceiling of the shelter, so it can be used for evening activities as well. On the right side, you can see kind of the area around the shelter, a number of amenities identified. So there's some lawn games with there's 2 concrete cornhole sets just to the northeast of the shelter, and then also a concrete ping pong table adjacent to the shelter. And then we have some 2 different areas of Adirondack chairs just for kind of informal gathering. The one in the upper left kind of more for a larger gathering, and then the chairs next to the cornhole for just kind of a smaller gathering as well. This is also where that second restroom enclosure is identified. And this one would also incorporate storage area on the backside for some of the, like 5 of the wheeled trash receptacles that the city uses, so that they can be stored there, and then if needed for events, they can be pulled out and wheeled to a designated location and then kind of stored back behind that fence when that's done. And then we also have some limestone block benches along the kind of that main walkway along the parking lot. And then we've also added security lighting based on feedback from the open house, some security lighting along the north side of the parking lot, and then directly between the shelter and the basketball court. And then the shelter, similar to the skate park, we're looking at procuring that through a cooperative purchase agreement as well. So I guess to just touch on that, I'm not sure if anybody has used one of those before. I believe the city has previously used a cooperative purchase to secure different amenities or equipment. And so generally how those work is there's a number of different cooperative purchasing avenues that you can go, or different, not really companies, they're actually set up as like government agencies. And basically what they do is they allow eligible municipalities or government entities to purchase things directly from a specific vendor. So in this instance for the shelter, for example, we found an image of a shelter that the city really liked, and so we wanted to pursue that specific shelter. So by going through a cooperative purchase agreement, we can work directly with that shelter vendor and ensure that that's the vendor that we're going to get to actually provide the shelter and install the shelter. That helps in 2 different ways. One is that you're getting the product that you wanted, and it kind of streamlines and makes the purchasing process more efficient. And then it also helps to keep costs down. Typically, if we're going to lump the shelter into like the overall park contract, the general contractor is going to provide or add a markup to the cost of that shelter, generally in the range of like 10 to 20%, I'd say. So, say for a $250,000, $300,000 shelter, then you're adding on another $50,000 just for the markup for them to procure that. So that's kind of a way that by going through the cooperative purchase, you kind of navigate around that markup. The company will do the the design of the shelter and also the installation of the shelter as a separate contract, but it kind of in conjunction with the overall park improvement project. So moving forward with that agreement, generally what would happen is, we'd get an overall scope and budget from the shelter company, and kind of when we move forward with the overall park project, if a bid is awarded on that project at that same meeting, we would ask council to approve these cooperative purchase agreements. So it's kind of just pulling the cost of those two items out of the overall contract into two little separate contracts. And I know it sounds kind of weird. It's like, how can you do that? So we have done that with a number of our other clients, and we did run it by the city attorney just to confirm that it's something that they're comfortable with, and that it just to confirm that these avenues do meet all necessary legal requirements, and they did review it and say that it's they are comfortable with moving forward with it. So. Looking at some of the other amenities at the park, again, just kind of mentioned them already, but signage at the park, there's kind of three different types of signs identified. The first one is kind of the entry sign, so that would be down near the parking lot on Ironwood Drive. The middle sign on top is kind of that trail kiosk, so on one side would be a map of Ironwood Park specifically, and then the other side would have a map of the citywide trail system. And then the upper right is some wayfinding signage. We have two locations identified for those, kind of at where trails intersect and stuff, where you'd expect kind of heavier pedestrian activity, just to help people navigate the different amenities at the park. Along the bottom, just some of the other amenities, the Adirondack chairs in the bottom right, and the picnic tables, and then the concrete ping pong table, and the concrete cornhole with the city logo, water tower logo on them. And then the last thing looked at was trail loops and connectivity, both within the park and to surrounding neighborhoods. So we kind of identified within the trail system here 3 different loops. First one's a 1/3 mile loop, so that would be the blue loop, kind of that center loop there. Smaller loop in kind of the center of the park, and then 3/4 mile loop, kind of that's concentrated on the southwest corner there of the site, and then a 1 mile loop that kind of navigates the perimeter of the park. Just kind of planning for different ability levels within the trail system. So looking at the current project cost estimate, kind of broke things down into kind of several major groups here. So site work and utilities, kind of covering grading, erosion control, the construction of those additional culverts. There's 2 additional culverts to allow for trail crossings, and then water connection to the site. Trails and sidewalks, obviously all the bituminous trails and concrete sidewalks throughout the park. Site furnishings, with all the chairs, picnic tables, bike racks, signage, ping pong and cornhole, and the limestone benches. And then kind of the major amenities group would be the parking lot, the picnic shelter, skate park, outdoor classroom, basketball court, and the restroom enclosures. Lighting and electrical with the safety and security lighting. And then landscape, so trees and kind of site restoration, turf establishment work. Putting everything together, the total project currently comes to $1.86 million. And so currently, I believe the park dedication fund has about $1.5 million with some anticipated funds through future development. I don't know if you want to speak more to that, Erin.
Sure. So we are forecasting right now just projects that are in for final plat, so projects that we know are moving through the process. So we have Brookview, Phase 2 of Timber Creek, and then the Preserve. We also have the Next Steps Daycare project. So between those 4 that we know are pretty solidly coming in at this point, we believe we'll get about $500,000 in park dedication, just based on the projects that we know, and then what we have discussed with the developer for park dedication. So it looks like there's a gap right now. I anticipate those projects coming in the next 2 to 6 months probably. So the timing of it, I think, might work out just perfectly. So I'll keep you posted on that number, but at this point we feel comfortable that the 1.86 is attainable through projects that we know are coming in.
Did that number go up? I feel like we were looking at 1.5.
The total number did, yes.
Yeah, and that increase, stems from a number of things. Kind of expansion of the scope with some of those added features, like the expansion of the picnic shelter and the addition of security lighting and expansion of the parking lot and some of those things. Obviously, it played a part in that, and then just rising material costs.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So kind of talking next steps. So we're kind of through all the stuff in gray up here at the council work session tonight. So how we're looking to proceed here is April 18th meeting, next meeting, look at having plans for approval and authorization to bid, and then bid the project late April through early May, and then looking at that second meeting in May likely for to bring it to council for project award, as well as the approval of those 2 other cooperative purchase agreement contracts. And then construction late May to June of 2023. We're anticipating the majority of the work to happen in 2022, likely November 2022 substantial completion date, and then with some site restoration work, landscape work, carrying over to 2023. With that, open it up for any questions.
All right, questions, council?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
So Jonathan, you mentioned the lighting.
Yes.
And that there's lighting at the shelter.
Yep.
And then 2 spots for security measures type lighting. I see one on the map, and the other one would be between the basketball and the skate park.
Yeah, so there's actually two lights on the north side of the parking lot. There's one right next to the drop-off.
Okay.
And then there's one on the kind of further west by the kind of the main walkway to the shelter.
Okay.
And then down that kind of main central sidewalk to the
Okay.
skate park, there's one right at that crossing where the 2
Okay, so I see
sidewalks
those
come
2.
together.
Are those on 24/7? Or maybe that's not decided
Yeah,
yet?
it's kind of up to the city.
Okay.
How you want to operate those lights.
You mean like during the daytime? I don't think we'd keep them on.
Or, yeah, or
Yeah,
sorry, like
yeah.
all night long. Sorry.
Yeah. So they typically come on at
Yeah,
dusk
dawn
and
and, yeah,
sun.
yeah, dusk to dawn.
Yeah. That was a comment that we got from some residents in the area, just about concerns about
Yeah.
vandalism and people being in the park at night, and so those were added based on those concerns.
Are those, excuse me, solar or hardwired?
Hardwired.
Okay.
Yep.
When plans and specs come back to us in April, it would be helpful to have that detail of are they on dusk to dawn?
Sure.
And is it just those 2, which it looks like it would be? And then maybe also clarification on so safety lighting, I'm thinking is just the lower, how do we define the lighting? Is there's security lighting, there's safety lighting?
Yeah, I'd say, so the vision of the lighting is, so the 2 lights on the north side of the parking lot, those are going to be kind of your standard parking lot lights, kind of matching what's at the transit center across the street.
Okay.
So they're often referred to as like shoebox lights. It's kind of, I don't know, they just look like shoe boxes up in the air. So that's kind of the style that those would be. They'd be overhead, and just intended to provide kind of general area lighting of those 2 areas. One for a safety of people being dropped off and people accessing the shelter, but also just for security
Right.
at night. And then the one kind of at the intersection of those two sidewalks further north. That one would be a kind of a post-top lantern style light that would match what's being used in some of the developments. And that one would be kind of more of a pedestrian scale light, just kind of intended to provide some area light right in that area.
Okay. Another question on the lighting.
Yep.
Was there discussion on having lighting further north in that park where there's the existing electrical panel and then the second set of portable restrooms? Or would maybe motion censored lighting?
Yeah, we didn't discuss lighting in those areas. That area specifically wasn't brought up. So we did not pursue that. It was kind of more of this specific area was identified.
Yeah. So I don't know, be curious if council has thoughts on that.
Aren't there lights on the field?
Ooh,
If there's lights on the field, there should be plenty of light to light up that area.
yeah.
Elementary school's parking lot.
Okay. My other question for lighting then is, we have the skate park lit here, and I think that it is helpful for a number of reasons.
Yes.
And so I know that it's not on here to light the skate park. Tell me intention behind not, or we just didn't talk about it.
So we did have discussions about that, and the reason it's not in there currently was more of I'd say a budgetary thing, but we are designing the electrical system to accommodate lights at the skate park as well as lights at the basketball court. And then we're also anticipating that system being able to, in the future, support electric vehicle charging stations, a couple of those in the parking lot, as well as some electrical outlets along the parking lot for like food trucks or some other needs like that. Okay. So we're going to kind of oversize the system to accommodate some of those needs in the future. What's the thought there?
Okay, because I think lighting at the skate park, just considering the age group that hangs out there, sometimes gets to some mischief, and with vandalism and things like that. I don't know what the cost is to have it in right away, but I mean, is it a significant cost to have it put in right away?
We could look at that. I mean, we can explore what those costs are. I can't speak to what it would be off the top of my head, but you're looking at probably not just a shoebox style light, but more of a spotlight type application there.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd probably have a couple poles with a couple lights on each, but we can look into that.
I'd just like to know the numbers at least, so we have that. And
Okay.
I appreciate the fact that it's going to be the electricity is going to be basically stubbed out there for later.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to know what that number is.
Okay.
And I have a question too on trail connectivity. So looking more at the northwest part of the park,
Yep.
where there's the future regional lift station.
Yes.
Is there any possibility to access the trail between, so I'm looking at
Let's see.
the plan layout is number 4 for me. Yep, so I'm at the top left.
Yep.
Could somebody access the trail between that pond and that line of trees, kind of maybe the hedge on the left, or could they cut across easier than having to go? And I only see one access point to the trail up in that corner.
Yeah, I believe there's an access point a little bit further west as well. That's going in as part.
I
of the
just don't see
development.
it.
Here.
It's just kind of
That's what
off.
he's pointing.
Yeah, that's the only
Is it
one
just
I
off the
see.
map
Oh, I
there?
see.
Yeah, there's this one up here.
Right, and is there one?
Yeah,
going
there's
in?
one at Boulder.
Correct. So there is one further west, and then there's the one that you see on the screen.
Oh, and then-
The reason we don't have one by the lift station is that there aren't pedestrian improvements in that spot.
Okay.
So you would dump into Monroe into a spot that doesn't have a crosswalk or pedestrian improvements there.
No other questions. Otherwise, I like what's presented, but similar to what Christy said, just seeing the numbers on what it would be to increase the lighting.
Okay.
Joy?
For the cornhole and the ping pong tables, how would we handle the gear?
Yeah, so that would be either people would have to bring their own,
Okay.
or
Good
it could be, or they could check it out at City Hall.
Okay.
There's not a great way
There's
to
not a
have
great
it
way.
available there.
Bring your
Make
own
sure
is
people-
awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of those tough spots where there's not a great way to. I know there have been communities who have done like lock boxes,
Yeah.
where you still have to come in and get a key or
Right.
something from City Hall. If you were, say, going to rent the shelter, you could maybe get that key so you'd have access to that stuff. But yeah, otherwise, generally for stuff like that, we just do kind of bring your own.
Okay. I see a great fundraising opportunity in the future, car-themed bags and paddles.
You never know who might donate.
Come on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Steamboat days? I'm just throwing it out.
All right,
there. Okay.
anything else, Joy?
No, that's all I have. You guys asked a lot of good questions.
Christy?
Mine is really simple. Can you just remind me of the capacity that the shelter's at now?
Yeah, so it's a 60 by 30 shelter. We're showing 10 picnic tables. I'd say about 6 people per table. So it's about 60.
What's the
50 to
length of the
60.
picnic? Are they 6-foot picnic tables?
Yeah, they're
or
6 foot
planning?
picnic tables.
Maybe even 8 then. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And then that'll just get rented out the same as anything else
Anything.
that you would. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
At the water fountain, was there any discussion regarding a dog water station?
Yeah, we're currently not showing one, but it can be added. Yeah, just, it's just, but.
Dog water?
Yeah, they have
I thought you said
Yeah.
a double decker, right?
Right? Can't you just get a spigot at the bottom and you have isn't it one unit? Can you do it where you have a spigot at the bottom?
Yeah, so I believe the current, I should put a picture in here, but I believe the current one might have 2
Gonna need a
heights
doggy bag
of
station.
water fountain for, for people. You can get an addition on the bottom of kind of a bowl for dogs. And then there's also a kind of an access door that has a faucet that you can turn on. So if you want to hook a hose up to it or, allow people to use it for, if they rent the shelter, you can do that too. So they have a water source. But yeah, currently the one that we have in there currently doesn't have a dog feature, but it could be added.
I'd like to see the number on that.
Okay.
The Adirondacks chairs, and how are they secured along with the picnic tables?
Yeah, so the Adirondack chairs would be surface mounted, so they would be bolted into the concrete.
Thank you.
Picnic tables, they can be surface mounted.
But
or
they're
they-
heavy enough where they're not going to go anywhere.
Right. It depends, if you want to allow people flexibility to rearrange the shelter, or
Got
if
it.
you'd rather have stationary.
Got it.
Glenn, have you ever tried to move the ones that are up at Community Park? It takes a little bit. It takes a few people to get those drug around, so.
But yet there's one
Heavy's
by
good.
the
Yeah.
skate park, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you'll drag it, you're not gonna do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Anything else, Glenn?
sorry, I was just going to add, I think adjacent to like the skate park and the basketball court, like those would be good places to surface mount those tables.
Yeah.
So the skaters aren't pulling them out into the skate park and things like that. But then in the shelter, keep them movable for flexibility.
That pretty much answers all my questions. You said in the future, you're thinking about putting something in the parking lot so people can plug in their vehicles?
Yeah, that's the plan, is to at least make sure the system is sized large enough to accommodate that in the future. If that's
Got
something
it.
that.
How far is it from the shelter to the parking lot? Approximately.
Probably 40 to 50 feet.
And how many outlets do you have on the shelter?
So we have 2 outlets in 4 of the posts. So we've got 8 outlets kind of around the perimeter.
Got it.
And we have 8 outlets on the food service counter.
Got it. So 100-foot extension cord, people could charge their cars.
Yeah, well, I don't know how that works in terms of sizing of the system, but
I'm just
you
saying.
could, yeah. If it works.
That's all I got.
Just a few questions for me. Is there for the outdoor classroom / like amphitheater area, is there gonna be a chalkboard in there?
There's not planned to be.
Okay. And then the only thing, looking at the, I guess if you will, the east or the north porta potties, Chad, can you help me remember? It's kind of on the other corner where the art bench is, right?
That's on the southeast portion of that room.
That's like, is that?
It's right there.
Yes.
Kind of right here.
In between there. Okay.
I
I
think
just,
it's like right here. Yeah.
that's so there's a memorial bench there that a family gave to the city, donated to the city to have there. And it's really pretty. The baby's name is inscribed in it in a little plaque. And I don't want this like beautiful memorial bench for the vista to be the porta potties.
Yeah.
So I understand that
Okay.
we're going to have screening there, but I think there's also some other senses that porta potties can reach. So I wonder if we shouldn't review that location a little bit, just even if it's, a little bit more on that, beyond, you can't see where I'm pointing, but maybe
Okay.
to the east a little bit, south, east, not as far, closer kind of the circular drive of the school, because the bench points northwest. And I just don't kind of want that to be in their field for that bench.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Going back to Christy's comment, I think that we wanted it moved to that spot anyways. But I think through versions, we might have missed that. Is
Yeah,
that?
I think we moved that one closer actually even to the parking lot.
I think
or
so,
even
too.
the
Even if
other
it's
one.
kind of where it looks like there's a concrete pad
Yep.
transition.
So I suspect through a couple versions, we might have just missed that.
Missed
But I
that.
remember that comment that we wanted it closer to that
Yeah,
parking lot.
Yeah.
That's actually, that would be on the school's property then.
Oh, I
So
see.
that's kind of where, the property line is actually like, not too far east
Got it.
of this trail stub here.
And how far down does it go?
All the way, yeah.
Okay,
It runs
just
down.
straight from there all the way down.
Straight down, yeah. So that's where I was looking at an area over here.
Okay.
And then I pulled it into the circle because of that and also because of the grading. Just trying to find a flatter spot to keep that pad a little bit level. It could go, generally the inside of this circle is flat, so it could go anywhere along the inside of this circle. We could look at shifting it further this way if you want to get it farther away from that bench, but this is kind of like a little drainage area in between these trails.
Is
We-
that a little point to me where that?
I think the bench is right there.
Co-
I think. It's been a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
We can come back to you with
Okay.
that. We can, if it ends up being on the school property, I'm sure we could work out a simple agreement with them to place it there as long as we do maintenance or conduct maintenance on it. There is one additional piece, and I know Chad has been working on this last week while I was out, but just some food for thought. I know there's a couple of items that we're looking at getting some costs on related to lights on the skate park and the dog water feature bubbler.
Thank
right?
you.
But related to Chad, he's been working with some of our youth organizations about storage for some field equipment, et cetera. And in the past, we've run into a little bit of heartburn when an association kind of owns the building on site and tries to manage that and others' use. And so one of the concepts that we were talking about is having a small storage building with kind of almost locker spaces or different doors where they could lock and get access to that. Would the council be okay if Jonathan, Chad, and I worked on a cost to include that with the project? We might pick up some economies of scale here if we bid that with it and cite it, and maybe it solves some other of the issues that we're looking at. Would you be okay with looking at that
For
cost?
a building?
That's probably, they're looking for, yes, that's what they would need as a building to kind of store this stuff. It would basically be a 12 by 10 shed, but rather than having, what happens is you take, the soccer association wants a 12 by 10 shed, then football does, then lacrosse does, and so the concept would be to have it a more uniform looking space. Again, just looking for permission to look at a concept and a cost. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But at some point, we're gonna have to go back to the associations with some type of response. I'm just not, we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it just because it has just come up so recently.
I don't think it would hurt to look into it, but I've got to tell you, the project's already getting right at kind of our ceiling budget. And so when I hear building, I see dollar signs.
Oh.
And when you say shed,
We'll just take it out
That-
of engineering.
that doesn't look, as expensive to me, but I'm a little bit nervous that we're already reaching the budget and then some for this project. And these fields have been used without storage sheds.
Hey, you can certainly, I mean, that's the council's, I mean,
Just get a number.
we can certainly go to the groups and say this, there's not space for that. Other concept that we have bantered about is putting up a facility and then charging them monthly rent, just like a regular storage facility to cash flow the expenditure, if you will. I'm not, prepared to kind of do a deep dive into it. We can do that at your next work session, but because this came up last week, this was kind of at the tip of my tongue when we started talking about some of this. So I don't know if you have.
Do we have any storage facilities at Community Park or anywhere else?
We
do?
We do.
There is, but that's a long ways away. You might as well keep it,
I know, I'm just looking for precedent.
Oh, just, yes, so we do.
Yeah, do we have this at other parks?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, okay.
Lions
Yes.
and Lions Park too.
Oh, and Lions, okay.
Yeah, we have job boxes currently at all the parks.
And we don't charge for that or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
But the boxes at Lions Park are kind of like what the boxes are at the community gardens, right? We're not talking anywhere close.
Yes, similar.
Well, there's the storage, that storage room is between the bathrooms, and there's some stuff in there, at least there used to be, unless that's changed.
That's with one of the organizations. That's their portion of it.
Okay. I, again, already have a little bit of budget heartburn on this, so my vote would be no, not to even look into it.
I like the concept, but I've been in this situation involved with those organizations, and they are also going to be, they have been, and they're going to continue to be good heavy users of the new space.
I'm forgetting the numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
the worst we can do is look at it and say it's not a fit right now, we can't do it. So, but at least we know. So I'm forgetting the numbers.
Get the numbers.
I support getting the
And
numbers.
when we get the numbers, one of the things we can do, because I know they, at one point, well, I'm going to save that thought, because we've run into issues when they donate money and then they feel like the building is theirs, and we've had associations kind of quarrel over the use of the space. So just want to be real intentional about how we manage this so there's no hard feelings down the line. So.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think so. I'm in the minority, so I'm get the numbers, but I'd like to hear numbers and a plan to avoid the quarreling.
That's fair.
Let's see. The only other question that I had is you have the future lift station in there. Are we still thinking this is the future site of community gardens?
We haven't dipped our toe in that water because I just think it's kind of related to, we don't have a plan. It could be a variety of different things. For now, the community gardens are planned to be where they're at.
Okay.
And to add on to that, in the Parks Master Plan, when fields move to the south large park complex, community gardens could shift to community park as well.
Okay.
So knowing that the lift station is several years down the road, I think we'll plan to keep them, like Brent said, at the church, but there are a couple options in the future.
Okay. And I know I've shared this with you before, but my only concern for that is just walking distance. We can't have them by the lift station if there's not going to be parking there. So that's it. That and that bench, I would really prefer that the porta potties, if you were sitting on the bench, are not within your view. That's it for me. I think we've given you guys enough feedback. You clear?
I had one more comment
go
with
ahead.
the porta potties, so I am completely on board because we did talk about that, and then we also know hot summers, and that is by the teaching is maybe not as fantastic. I mean, not that the kids are in school all summer, but if we have a little concert out there or something, I think it's not an ideal spot. So if there is something we can work out with the school, I mean, really, if it's by their parking lot and we maintain it, I could imagine we'd be good partners with them on doing that. So I think that hopefully can be the resolution for that.
Good. All right. Do you have any from us?
Yep.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.
All right, moving on to item number 4, trail mapping and signage concept. Ms. Fitt.
Look at that. Ooh, I hope this works this time. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tying into the work that we just did with Jonathan, we're going to discuss tonight some trail mapping that we've been working on about the same timeline that we've been working on with Ironwood Park. So working pretty heavily with the Parks Commission as well as the City Council. So on the screen now is a map that the Parks Commission had worked through, so identifying some trail loops of different abilities, capacities, distances that we thought were a good representation of the community, some of the features that we have, highlighting our trail system. So it's a little tricky to see on the map now. I'm realizing that's the big like yellow loop through Hawthorne Ridge. I suspect the version in the packet is a little bit easier to see. So there are likely some that you don't see on the screen now just due to the resolution. So the Parks Commission put in a ton of work identifying these loops at different distances, capacities again. So hoping to have a trail that works for everyone, depending on ability and use that they would like to have in the trail system. So something that goes hand in hand with that, we felt like it's a good time to move forward with some wayfinding, so trail signage. Like Jonathan was mentioning, trail maps throughout the city, so you can take a look one day and try to figure out how you can get from point A to point B with a full trail map, and then some signs to make sure that you are continuing on the right path, just knowing that there are so many loops that the community can have and does have to make sure that you are getting from your intended plan A to plan B. So I received some feedback from the council that I have on the next slide that we can talk through, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. So some feedback, switching the signs from blue to green, which they did on the previous version. So the tops originally were blue, flipping them to green, which is more of our Carver signature color. Fewer signs throughout trail corridors. So if you saw on the first trail map, it did look a little bit busy with just them happening as often as they did. So reducing the amount of trail signs throughout the plan, which I know you are budget conscious tonight, so reducing the cost as well, which is great.
Tonight and every night I know.
That wasn't just you, it was the whole group. I promise. It was a hand.
I feel sorry, folks. Nobody cares about the money.
Including some, it was everyone in the room. Some mile markers, so making sure that you know how far you're hoping to travel. So if you have a young kid or a pet with you, knowing what you are getting into. Connection from Community Park to Carver Bluffs, which I think was a great point along JCP. And then adding in some regional trail connections. Not including them, obviously, with our signage because many of them are not our property, but just letting people know if you continue left, right, you're entering into a new system. So the big discussion tonight is just an overview of what your thoughts on the full trail map, the wayfinding signage, and then next steps for this. We are cognizant of Ironwood Park development, so we want to hold off on this a little bit, just knowing cost is important right now. In total, the map on the first slide, if we did all of that signage, it's about $22,000. So thinking through that number, we would like to see how Ironwood Park shakes first, to be super honest, just to see, have we fully depleted the park dedication fund? Do the bids come in different than we expect? So our first step right now would be having the map available at City Hall and the city website, and then moving towards that signage as we see how Ironwood shakes a little bit more and seeing what development comes in. So tonight, just looking for feedback on the map and then hoping to have a discussion in the next several weeks, months as we learn more about Ironwood numbers.
Great. I'll just share my thoughts. First, you have a question here at Ironwood Park loops. I think yes, I'm in favor of that. I also think, it's not a done deal yet, but I think there's some benefit beyond the budgetary reasons of waiting until 2023 because we've talked a lot about a potential trail in Brookview. I'd like to see that if that goes through in here. Let's see. Oh, the fourth or the new Hawthorne Ridge section from 6th Street or down to 6th Street would be a good addition too, I think. I do like the idea of adding the regional trails. And then I think the only other thing from me, and stop me if you've heard this before, but think it would be great to figure out a way to incorporate QR codes on there so that you can take a picture with your phone and up pops the larger map or
Yeah.
the map of the
Love that
orange
idea.
trail that you're on or whatever. We don't have an orange trail. But I'd love to see a connection to the site on the website.
Sure.
In my mind, not knowing a thing about it, that's easy enough to.
Yeah, I feel that same way, so we'll look into it.
Okay,
Can I ask
yes.
you a question about the QR code?
Yeah.
When you said that, do you
Yeah.
mean on the signs too? So as like I pass a sign out in real world time, I can
Yes.
do it? Okay,
Yeah, I'm
that's a
only
great
talking
idea.
about on the signs, but,
Oh.
I mean, yes, I guess maybe 2 on a hard copy. I don't know how many hard copies we'll be putting out, but yeah, I was thinking on the signs.
On the
So
signs.
as you're going through and you're in Hawthorne Ridge and you kind of in that point in the trail where you don't know if it's gonna end or if there are 16 more hills, like where you can kind of figure out where you are.
I think it's a great idea.
That's a great idea. I like it.
That's it for me.
So you took my feedback about loop down to Carver Bluffs, because that certainly exists, and the regional trail connection into the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, whatever it is, the rapids, blah, blah. Anyway, so when we do have expansion to the west, right? I forget the name of the development. the other
Timber
three.
Creek?
Timber Creek. Yeah, so when we do have development that way, as long as we kind of keep that in mind, so maybe as we're doing developments, make sure that we're updating signage and that's incorporated in the plan, right? So that we just keep it up. I think it'd be great. I love the idea of just starting with map because I think we'll get some feedback for sure. And so that right when we're ready to do it and pull the trigger, you might have some additional feedback, not just from us, but from residents as well. Okay, that's all I have.
I have a question. I take it I know most of these trails, there's one that's not on here. Is it because these, I take it, are all like city maintained? Like we clear snow,
Which trail is that?
so I don't see the one, because I'm pretty sure it's association between like White Pine Way and Sumac Circle and Spring Creek around the ponds, but I think that's.
Yep.
Okay. And so everything else is city.
Correct. And the goal of this, there are trails in the community that aren't here, but it was
Like
loop
sidewalk
activities, right?
or-
Yep.
What was the other thing you said?
So the Parks Commission was looking for loops that you could
Loops,
do.
okay,
So
right,
if we highlighted every sidewalk and trail,
Okay.
the map would look really different and pretty busy. So we were hoping to identify ways that you could
Because I noticed
get
there's some trails,
places.
some sidewalks, but
Yep.
it's more the concept of the loop, which is great. That's incorporated because that was brought up a lot by the commissioners. Okay, thank you. That was.
Is it, I know this, I envision this slide kind of being the map, right, that we'd have at City Hall or that you
Correct.
could download online. And it's got the streets on here, so that's helpful from a navigation perspective. I also like that we're not just looping, but we're also providing pedestrian connections between neighborhoods, right? How do you get from one neighborhood to another? Is it helpful to put neighborhood notations on here, right? Because we have here's Oak Tree, here's Spring Creek, here's, I don't know,
We could definitely take a look. I get a little bit anxious if it gets too busy,
for sure.
but we could take a look at it.
And maybe
But I
it's only in
think
the
an
QR
X-
code version.
Yeah. I think for the maps, to make sure there's an X, you are here, because we look at these. If you are a resident who doesn't look at these maps a lot, you're gonna be like, oh, great. I have no idea what this means, where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay.
Christy? Yeah, so for the signs, I'm glad to see that the green, that is a little more of our signature color, so I'm glad to see that flip-flopped. Backing up then, though, to Ironwood Park, I believe those are blue on top and green on the bottom, so we need to flip those also then?
Yeah,
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
I just didn't get around to updating those.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Aaron, from I think the first rendition I saw, so how many, did we take a few off from that, or is this the original?
This is the original.
This is the original.
Yep.
So is the intent then to maybe to have a few less dots on here? Just we've got street signs and we have speed limit signs and we have this sign and that sign. And
Yeah.
so it might get a little bit overwhelming of signs.
Yes, so like when you made that comment, I looked at the green loop is the one that I focused on, where you can't get off that trail. So you're just going to continue
Yeah.
moving.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we'll make our way through and
Okay.
nix a couple of them on each, I think.
Okay. I agree with, I think it was Courtney who said adding the Ironwood Trail Loops and the regional in. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't do that. That's all I have.
The only thing I had was mileage on the loops. That was it.
That's a good idea.
Other than that, at the end of Sixth Street, the cart path up the hill.
Sorry, I said I was done, but I have one more question. How many kiosks are there? I think I'm just seeing one that has the broader trail map.
Nope, there's a couple.
Okay.
Like there's, Jonathan, can you help me?
Yeah, I think right now that figure only shows one, but so there'd be one generally at, oh no, there's one at the end
I
of
see one
Sixth
at the
Street
end
and
of Sixth
Broadway.
Street. Yep.
Yep, and then, Aaron and we talked about putting one kind of by JCP, in Sixth, somewhere near the roundabout, and then the one at Ironwood Park.
I haven't thought this thought yet, so you can give me feedback, but the top of like Snake Trail might be another good spot for it.
I would almost argue if we're going to do the QR codes on all the signs, I would almost argue that we don't need them.
Okay.
Those are going to be large maps. They'll be expensive to update. They'll potentially be out of date 3 weeks
Ooh,
after
that's
we
a
put 'em
fair
up.
point. QR codes are better.
So I just a thought.
Say
Okay.
that one more time, Courtney. I'm sorry, I was focused
So
on
instead of having the big
about people that
kiosk
don't
that
wanna
has
carry
this and trying to put it in locations throughout the city where you can hit everybody that's walking them, I say we eliminate them and we don't use them. But instead, we've got QR codes on all of the little, you're on the red trail signs. So that'll take you right to the larger map that's online and will always be current. Instead of having to update the bigger, more expensive maps that'll go out of date pretty easily.
So if we even had 2 QR codes on there, one for the overall trail map and one to tell you where you're, for the loop that you're on too?
I think there's just one and it takes you to what's hopefully an interactive map.
What about people that don't walk with phones?
So both of those folks, I think, wouldn't use the QR code either way.
And we could have paper copies available at City Hall
Yeah.
if
Oh, for
someone
sure.
wanted to
Yeah.
stop in.
Yeah.
And the paper is easier to update.
Yeah.
Cheaper.
And I think it's maybe not just straight paper. Like maybe we make them a little stronger that someone could use it.
If we have some of the mile markers actually on the signs, if it makes sense. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then for those folks who aren't traveling with their phone.
They know what
I
they're
know
doing.
you get all choked up.
Okay, while you're coughing, the other thought that I had is I would, if there's a way, I'd love to see the underpasses marked on this. Because I think those are our safest ways of crossing JCP.
Oh, that's a
and
good
I just
point.
think it would be really good to be able to see those on this map.
Engineering.
I tried to buy you a little time.
Just anyways, it's not coming out very well. So, but we had talked about having some of the mile markers, like the lights, that might solve some of that non-phone. And then I'm gonna stop talking because it's not coming out right anyways. What? No, it's not that.
Okay, mile markers, okay. All right. Do you have what you need from us?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, we've got a little over 20 minutes left. If we talk about JCP maintenance, can we do it in about 12 minutes?
Sure.
All right.
Excellent.
We'd like to have 10 minutes in between our meetings, so
Okay.
that's why I'm.
Yep. Let's see.
And as Erin knows, I like to ask for the lightning round presentation, right?
I like that.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So, yeah, Brent had asked if I could prepare kind of an overview of, the landscape treatments that were applied on Jonathan Carver Parkway and kind of an understanding of, what those treatments are, what the maintenance expectations are for those, just so that everybody has a better understanding of that. So kind of touch on the different treatments, and then look at some of the tools that we're developing to help Chad and the rest of the crew kind of with the maintenance aspect of this moving forward. So just to highlight kind of how the plan came to fruition. It's kind of the overall landscape plan was based kind of on the direction of the steering committee, kind of their vision for the corridor. and overall city maintenance concerns relative to, the amount of landscaping that's going to be out there, and then just kind of overall project budget and costs for these treatments. The steering committee was interested in kind of a park-like setting, more natural plantings, something beyond your typical street corridor. They wanted to avoid extensive pavement in the medians and manicured plantings in favor of more natural plantings. And then the city as well was interested in the aesthetic aspect of things, but also wants to minimize maintenance. So through the corridor, we implemented a number of different treatments. So this is kind of just an overall list, and I'll get into these more extensively in the next couple slides. But just kind of targeting different areas of the corridor with different seating types and landscape treatments. So looking at the boulevards, which is generally on the figure on the right, it would be kind of the light green areas either between the trail and the roadway, or just kind of that 10 to 15 foot space on the outside of the roadway. We're looking at doing a low maintenance turf mix. And so this is a mix that consists primarily of fescue species. So they're very drought tolerant. They can tolerate less strict maintenance regime than your traditional, bluegrass lawn mix. So anticipated maintenance for these areas would be mowing about 1 time per month or longer, depending on weather, and then treatment with these areas can be treated with herbicides and fertilizer as needed. Within the medians, we looked at doing a native seed mix. So this is flowering perennials and grasses with a max height of 3 feet. So, for that safety, from that safety perspective, we want pedestrians to be visible through the corridor. So we looked at eliminating any plants that were over 3 feet. Maintenance needs for these areas include mowing and weeding during establishment, and so these native areas don't establish overnight. They take about 3 years to fully establish. So with these native areas, generally the saying is, they sleep, they creep, and then they leap. So that first year they're really not doing much. It's really about those plants are starting to build their roots, and the cover crop is really what's providing that cover. So that's where you see the taller grass out there. That's kind of the cover crop that's intended to help stabilize the soil. And then the second year, you'll start to see pops of color and some of those more long-term grasses. And then the third year, those plants should be fully established. Outside of the boulevards, we used a couple different native mixes. So a MnDOT native mesic prairie mix. So this is kind of similar to a previous mix, but it incorporates some taller species. The short grass only mix is a native mix of just grass species. So you can use weed treatment, herbicides on that. You can also just mow it in more of a typical fashion if you want. So that was implemented in areas where we had kind of a narrower right-of-way. And then the stormwater mix, that's targeted towards kind of the ponds and stormwater treatment areas on the project. And then the other treatments, we had some high maintenance turf that was implemented, and that's generally in areas that are already maintained by residents or homeowners associations and that type of thing. So tying into some of those existing subdivisions. Had some enhanced landscape plantings. These were generally located at the 6th Street JCP intersection. These areas all received irrigation as well, so that'll really help with the maintenance of these areas. Generally, the only maintenance that should be required should be, periodic weeding of the mulch areas, and then kind of replacement of mulch on an as-needed basis. And then once a year, typically in the early spring, you'd go out and kind of chop off the old growth to allow for the new growth to come through. And then tree plantings, we use 3 different kind of group varieties of trees. We have the overstory shade trees, and these typically occur outside of the roadway. Typically, you'd see these in the boulevards, kind of between the sidewalk and the road. but because of clear zone requirements, we had to kind of push them outside of that trail. So it's a little different application, but still kind of serving that same purpose of providing some shade for the trail users and some shade for the roadway. Evergreens we used in select locations through the corridor where some additional screening was needed, whether that be where some existing screening was removed from residents' properties or other screening needs throughout the corridor as needed. And then ornamental trees, these were installed throughout the medians. So the intent is that these will be a smaller tree. It'll provide some seasonal interest and also kind of reduce the amount of litter that gets onto the roadway. And we incorporated 6 species of ornamental trees. Looking at tools that we're developing to assist with the maintenance of these areas. So we did develop some maintenance schedules. These kind of highlight the different landscape treatments throughout the corridor and specific maintenance requirements for those different areas. You'll note the trees and the landscape beds indicate contractor responsible for the maintenance for the first 2 years of those areas, just as kind of that's the establishment period that the contractor is required to maintain those. After that 2-year period, then the maintenance would transition over to the city.
Jonathan, is that first year 2021 or 2022?
Yeah, so it would be, so the first year is this year,
Okay.
2022. So you'll notice like for the ornamental trees, the landscape beds, maintenance would transition over to the city in August of next year.
Okay, great.
So we've developed those schedules and then also some maintenance maps for the corridor. And these generally just kind of key those to where those different seating treatments were installed and some of where the kind of more polished landscape beds are installed to just help the city with some maintenance, a better understanding of where those different maintenance requirements are going to be.
Just one more piece as Jonathan wraps up. I asked Chad to come up. That would be a good time if the council has different expectations or enhanced expectations from the maintenance applications that Jonathan mentioned, to have a conversation with Chad and have a dialogue on that. With the council being here and Chad kind of getting started on what will be the team's first go around on maintenance, obviously later on in the season, but just kind of preparing and having that conversation. So I just wanted to add that before we get started.
Okay, I'll kick it off. So I think I learned tonight that the area that I had a concern about isn't something that's mowed, but what was looking, and I understand the 3-year cycle now, and that I need to be patient and that it'll stop looking as natural as it was last summer. But I'm thinking of the area kind of along 6th Street and the roundabout by Community Park. There, where it's looking real natural.
Yeah,
area.
we had discussions, and we don't know if that was mowed last fall
It was
or not. Just by the looks of it, it didn't look like it had been mowed. But like Jonathan said, over time, we'll mow it 3 times the first year, twice the second, once, and I think that's more of a manicured. That's going to be mowed weekly, so it will change from what it looks like right
Okay.
now.
But isn't that, according to the map, going to be some of the wilder?
Yeah, the
Is that
slope, you're talking about the slope kind of behind the monument sign
Correct.
going down to Community
Yep.
I
Park.
think, can you bring that map back up?
Yeah.
Please?
Is it
Yeah,
the
so that big
blue?
yellow area that's intended to be a native mix there. I know there was some conversations at some of our construction meetings about, when that might have been seeded, and there was some issues with timing of that seeding, so it's something I think that we need to look into a little further in that specific location,
Okay.
at least, but it is intended to have a natural look.
Okay.
So,
By natural, I guess I'm meaning it looked pretty nasty. Perhaps, again, it's a 3-year cycle of patience before it looks as beautiful as it does in that picture, but it was looking very ragged and mostly weeds, so I'm not sure if that was seeded, when it was seeded. So, Glenn. No table talk.
And just a reminder too, we're going to be doing a full review of the whole corridor
Okay.
again this spring. You know, last fall got kind of late with the construction season, so at that point we all kind of, you know, just we're going to sit tight. We're going to walk it all again in the spring, and if there's deficient areas, they're going to get corrected. So.
Okay, great. And then my only other question is, everything been planted or seeded at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one to go along with what you were talking about with the area at the park. So when we're looking at this mix, I'm not familiar with the mix, the pretty darn quick that you have, but when I'm looking at some of just this picture could be it, or it could be just a picture grabbed off the internet. But in order to have it not look quite so unkempt, because native plants do look, I mean, they're wild, right? They look that way.
Yep.
We have this planted so that there's going to be blooming periods all through the whole season of the summer, or is it just we're going to get fall? Because I think if there's something that's blooming and we have different seed mixes that are in there,
Right.
then people are going to realize that that's intentional also, and that we just didn't forget to mow or
Sure.
put something in.
Sure. Yeah, there should be a variety of blooming times with that mix, but I will go back and review that.
Okay, if you could, that would be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Brent?
Just based on conversations the mayor and I have had, I think the expectation, if I can try to translate, is I think there happens to be every once in a while a straggler weed that goes up 3-4 feet or whatever it is. I think what I'm hearing is like if we could get somebody on our team to kind of look at that once a week to kind of take those out of there. Is that, am I hitting the notes that you're thinking of, or is it more the whole thing is?
You know, in my mind, the whole thing was looking just really unkempt.
Yeah.
But if this is part of the, what did you say? First year it sleeps, then it creeps, and then it jumps up
And
and
the
does
leaves.
cartwheels.
Yeah,
Leaves.
exactly. Somersault.
Like, I get it that you need to have patience for that. And I never said patience was a strong suit of mine. So maybe that's the case, but it was just looking like really, really weedy last year. But maybe that's what sleeping looks like.
And in that situation too, the construction limits, we couldn't really go in and
Yeah.
work on the construction limits until they were done grading, picking the rocks out, seeding. So it was kind of a, no, we're not going to touch it. We're going to wait until you guys
Yeah.
get it the way we want it, and then we'll maintain it after that.
Right, and I remember the email train of somebody from MnDOT was supposed to come in and mow, but it was up deer hunting or something. Like, I just would really love to see it taken care of, but maybe that's not doing anything, and so now I know. But you'll hear from me
Right.
if I have any further concerns. Any other questions, council?
No, that looks good to me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, can we push city manager's report to the meeting and council requests to the meeting? With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A motion by Councilmember Mock. I'll second. And a second by Councilmember Sayer. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.